We're trying to do two things here that need to be done. We're trying to renew Iranian sanctions that expire in December. The sanctions against Iran expire in December, and we're pushing our leadership, both sides of the aisle, to go ahead and renew these sanctions to let the Iranians know if they cheat down the road, there'll be something in place to snap back. But we're doing more than that. We're attaching to the Iranian sanctions renewal bill $1.5 billion of assistance to the state of Israel. The reason we're doing that is we want to send another message to the Iranians. The first message is, if you cheat on the Iranian nuclear deal, sanctions will be reimposed and they will be facing you. Number two, the more provocative you are toward Israel and our allies in the region, the more we're going to help them. So since the deal has been signed, the Iranians have test-fired 4 missiles in violation of UN resolutions. They have armed Hezbollah to the teeth. I was with Senator McCain a few months ago in Israel and told by the Prime Minister of Israel that Hezbollah has received up to 300 new missiles from Iran that are precision-guided that change the whole equation in terms of Israel's ability to defend herself. So what I want to do, along with my colleagues, is to give Israel $1.5 billion to deal with the multiple threats they face in the region, which is 1% of what the Ayatollah is going to get from sanctions relief. We're going to give the Iranians $150 billion of sanction relief. I think most members of Congress would like to give a little more to Israel in light of that dynamic. Secondly, I'm a big follower of the Iranian parliament, like many of you, I'm sure. So here's the deal. They've passed a law in Iran that says any money received from a foreign settlement with a foreign government must go into their defense department. The $1.7 billion we paid to get our hostages out was designated by the Iranian parliament to go to the Iranian military. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take $1.5 billion of new money and give it to our best friend in the region, the Israelis. And to the idea that Congress cannot independently make judgments about what kind of appropriations to make regarding Israel or any other entity is a non-starter for us all. We all believe that the right way to do business is for the Congress to appropriate, the President to agree or disagree, sign the bill or veto it, and not allow this MOU to be interpreted in the fashion they're trying to interpret it. Under this construct, in 17 and 18, Congress is basically shut out. So there's another reason we're here, to challenge the construct that Congress cannot appropriate independent of what President Obama says when it comes to Israel or any other entity. And with that, I will turn it over to Senator McCain.
Well, Senator Graham and I were reminded of this situation when we visited Prime Minister Netanyahu earlier this year. The growing threat posed by an emboldened Hezbollah, supplied with powerful weapons and military equipment from Iran, including several thousand precision-guided missiles. We note today, again, for the umpteenth time, an agreement between Kerry and his pal Lavrov has faded into the dust of history. But don't worry, John Kerry will be back to try to have another agreement with Lavrov. Meanwhile, the Iranians grow stronger. Meanwhile, the Middle East continues to unravel. Meanwhile, the threats to the United States continue to increase, including increasing capabilities of the Iranians as far as missile and attack capabilities, especially those in Lebanon. So the MOU is important. But to somehow say that the Congress of the United States does not appropriate money is a violation of the Constitution. The President proposes, the Congress disposes. And I believe that there will be a majority of Congress that, given the turmoil in the Middle East, due to the abject and total failure of American policy and a lack of strategy, that we may want to give additional funds so that Israel can defend itself. And for the administration to somehow impose restrictions on that amount of money is in keeping with their customary completely ignoring and violating the Constitution of the United States.
This morning in the Armed Services Committee, we heard the testimony of the nominee for STRATCOM, Commander General Hyten, and he made clear that one of the great threats that we're facing, and Israel directly is facing, is Iran and their ballistic missile program. In fact, we know that they have continued to test ballistic missiles post this flawed agreement, and in fact, in March, they tested 2 missiles that, according to reports, said Israel must be wiped out on the missiles in Hebrew. So to make clear, we need now more than ever to support our Israeli allies, and for this administration to somehow say, to go to our allies and to pressure them to say that the Congress of the United States should not allocate additional resources in light of the enhanced threats that Israel is facing directly from Iran, but not only Israel, our allies and us from their ballistic missile program. Not only is that unconstitutional, it's absolutely wrong, and I'm glad to support this additional aid to the country of Israel because it's clear that the largest state sponsor of terrorism post-agreement continues to support more terrorism, that this administration is doing nothing about Iran's ballistic missile program that threatens both Israel and our country. And it is time for us to make sure that the Congress asserts its role in giving this increase to Israel, but also that we re-extend the Iran sanctions. I hope we also take up the bill that I've offered, the ballistic missile sanctions that I think need to go in place right now against Iran for their continued testing of ballistic missiles, because this is a real threat to Israel and the world.
Thank you, Ted.
These are serious and dangerous times. America is facing multiple radical Islamic terror attacks here at home. This past week in New Jersey and New York, in Minnesota. The revelations about the administration sending billions of dollars of cash in unmarked cash in the dark of night on unmarked planes to Iran, cash that will almost surely end up being used for terrorism, being used to murder Americans, being used to murder Israelis, being used to murder our allies. And just this week, President Obama referring to Israel at the United Nations as occupiers. These are perilous times for the nation of Israel, and they are perilous times for America. The Memorandum of Understanding is an important baseline for U.S. assistance to Israel. It is a concrete demonstration of our commitment to this vital alliance. And it is also significant that this Memorandum of Understanding was negotiated between a liberal democratic administration in the United States and a conservative Israeli government, underscoring that I believe the alliance with Israel should not be a partisan issue. That said, I and each of us up here have significant concerns with aspects of the MOU that attempt to restrict Congress's rights and responsibilities, particularly our ability to appropriate additional funds as we, and not the executive branch, deem consistent with the interests of the American people. Our alliance with Israel is not a disinterested charity. It is a vital national security alliance. It furthers the national security interest of America and the national security interest of Israel, which are intertwined. It was recently announced that the next generation of Israeli missile defense, David Sling, which was jointly developed between the United States and Israel, would be part of an arms deal with Poland, a wonderful example of the fruits of our alliance defending the free world. This partnership is very much in the best interest and national security interest of the United States. Why on earth would we want to limit protecting our national security? Obviously, we don't want to spend money unnecessarily. But why wouldn't we do everything we can to keep America safe? And how can we know that a number established in 2016 will be remotely adequate in 2026? Congress must retain, and under the Constitution, Congress will retain the discretion to increase assistance as circumstances warrant. Support for Israel is not a burden. It is an investment in our mutual national defense against a common enemy that is radical Islamic terrorism. The MOU is an important baseline, but Congress can and must play an ongoing active role in making sure that the alliance is adequately maintained. Senator Graham's legislation has brought together a diverse array of senators committed to strengthening our friendship with Israel and committed to doing whatever it takes to keep this country safe, and also committed to protecting the constitutional authority of Congress over appropriations. And I'm proud to stand with him on these vital issues.
Thank you, Ted, very much. Well said. Questions?
Have you had any feedback from Israel about how they feel that?
I received a letter that the Prime Minister wrote to the Secretary of State saying that in 17 and 18 they would refund any money over the MOU. Now, it's not clear to me whether or not that includes supplemental appropriations. Nobody respects BB more than I do, but here's what we cannot allow. You cannot allow the President, the executive branch, to collude with a foreign leader, even a friend, to say Congress has no say about how to do the business of appropriating. So we reject that concept. But here's the real question. Does Bibi need the money? Does Israel need the money? Israel's not Bibi. Israel is a democracy that will have many prime ministers long after both of us are gone. The question is that when we go to Israel, we're briefed in detail about the threats they face, an increasing threat from Hezbollah due to missile capability provided by the Iranians. Do they need the money? If they don't need the money, I will vote against my own bill. If they do need the money, I hope they will stand up and say, we thank you. Because they have many friends in Congress across both sides of the aisle that see deterioration in the region. The MOU was $38 billion. Congress appropriated this year $3.4 billion for the foreign military financing. The deal is $3.3. Congress this year appropriated $600 million for missile defense. In 2018, the deal goes to $500. Tell me how in 2018 you think Israel's missile defense needs will be less, given the threats from Iran. So to my friends in Israel, you have every right to sign this MOU. It is an important baseline, but I think you left money on the table. And let me conclude with this, that when we go to Israel and get briefed, as many of us have, we want to help because it's in our interest to make sure that the only democracy in the region survives. Because the people who want to destroy Israel also want to destroy us. In light of what the Iranians have done since signing the nuclear deal, I want to send a message to Iran. Here's what the Ayatollah said the day we voted. God willing, there will be no such thing as a Zionist regime in 25 years. Until then, struggling, heroic, and jihad morale will leave no moment of serenity for the Zionist. I'd say to Israel, they will not see the end of these 25 years. I don't think he's bluffing. So the more provocative the Iranians are toward Israel, the more supportive we should be. So, to our friends in Israel, if you don't need the money, tell me so, and I'll withdraw this bill. If you do need the money, take it because it's good for you, it's good for us, and to every member of the Senate, you should vote on this. How do you feel about the idea that a president would knock you out of the business of doing your job, going around the Congress, trying to get a foreign government to collude with them so that we no longer have the power of the purse? If you don't like this $1.5 billion additional money to Israel, you don't think it's needed, then veto the bill, Mr. President. To a senator, if you think this is too much, vote against it. That's the way the system works. You see? Yeah.
To either of you. Last week, the State Department officials said that all the cash the United States gave to Iran is being used for economic purposes, not being used to fund terrorists. Can you speak to that?
Well, there's a disconnect between the State Department's view of what's happening to the money and what the Iranian parliament did. We have press reports outside of Iran, because there's not a whole lot of reporting inside of Iran, that says that the parliament, which is a puppet of the Ayatollah, passed a law, I think it's Rule 22, we'll get you the information, saying that all the money coming in from the United States, the $1.7 billion, will go to the Iranian military. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to get our best friend a little more money. It's not 1.7 billion, it's 1.5. It's 1% of what the Ayatollah is going to get. Here's the simple question for members of Congress. Are you willing to put on the table 1% additional assistance to Israel compared to what the Ayatollah will get in the next couple of years of $150 billion? I am ready, Ted is ready, and there's no stronger voice for constitutional systems than Ted Cruz. What they're trying to do here should bother every member of Congress, regardless of party.
Well, and I'll just underscore on the Iran deal, the facts of the transfer raise glaring red flags. These were pallets of cash transferred into foreign currencies, unmarked bills, transferred in the dead of night on unmarked planes. An analogy I've used before, if I were buying a home from you and I showed up at the closing with 3 duffel bags of unmarked 20s, that would raise very serious questions in your mind. Who the heck is this guy and what's going on? Why isn't there a cashier's check from a mortgage company? Why isn't there ordinary, straightforward financial transactions? And the fact that these were hidden lead to 3 inferences. Number 1, the Obama administration did not want these found out and stonewalled and did everything they could to hide it. Number 2, it suggests that they knew full well that transferring billions of dollars to the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism violated federal law, and that's why they were hiding it. And number 3, it suggests there's a reason in particular Iran wants cash, because cash is untraceable, and cash can be used directly to fund terrorist activities. And so that raises serious questions. And let me note on the previous question about Prime Minister Netanyahu. Prime Minister Netanyahu is an extraordinary leader. When he addressed a joint session of Congress urging us to oppose this Iran deal, laying out the grave threat a nuclear Iran poses to Israel, to America, and to the world, I observed at the time that his speech and his leadership on this issue has been nothing less than Churchillian, providing clarity and vision and strength at a time that Israel very much needs it. Now, I understand why the Prime Minister was forced into this MOU deal. It is not complicated that if you're the Prime Minister of Israel, you have little choice but accede to the demands of the President of the United States. But I would note this is a president whose administration has crossed unprecedented thresholds. This is an administration whose political team, the Obama political team, traveled to Israel to help lead the campaign to defeat Prime Minister Netanyahu in his election. This is an administration who, reports have come out now, the State Department spent taxpayer dollars to support and assist the political campaign against Prime Minister Netanyahu. The idea that taxpayer dollars would be used to undermine a vital ally of America because politically the president has less than favorable views towards that particular political leader is deeply troubling. So I understand why Israel felt it had no choice but sign this agreement. But Congress, we have no choice but protect our constitutional prerogatives and responsibilities.
One last question. Yeah.
Senator, how do you anticipate that this plays out? If you told Israel you're going to send the money, they've said that they're going to send it back.
They've sent a letter to the Secretary of State, said they'd refund any additional aid over the MOU amount. That means, in effect, that Congress is basically dealt out of the game for at least 2 years. I don't like that construct. I don't know if it means supplementals. I do know this, there's bipartisan support in this body for additional aid. The last thing in the world I want to do is do a deal with Israel that shuts off the ability to provide assistance unless the president alone agrees. This was the president who brought you the Iranian nuclear deal that most people in Congress opposed. A majority of senators voted against the Iranian nuclear deal, but not enough. The Prime Minister of Israel spoke out, as Ted said, in the most strong and eloquent fashion against the deal. I will not accept for the next 4 or 5 months, whatever's left on his term, that I can't do anything as a member of the Senate as an appropriator unless Barack Obama agrees. Now, at the end of the day, That's not the way we do business in America, and I would not put that authority in the next president, no matter who he or she may be. All I can say, this is a very dramatic moment in the U.S.-Israel relationship between Congress and the State of Israel. Congress is not going to sit on the sidelines and be dealt out. I totally get what Bibi was facing, but there's a little bit more here. The ability for Israel to take 26% of the aid we provide to purchase from their own defense industries will be lost in the next decade. What does that mean? That means that Israel's domestic defense industries will have less money available to them to stay in business. Under the current construct, we share in all technology developed in Israel based on the money we send. I can give you a list, very long list of technologies coming out of Israel that benefited our military. Israel did not want that set aside to go away, but it did. So I'm going to introduce legislation to restore it. Now's not the time to tell the Iranians that we're going to be less supportive of Israel's ability to defend herself. Now's not the time to say that we're going to nickel and dime Israel, because Congress appropriated $3.4 billion. 3.3 is less than where a majority of Democrats and Republicans were. Congress is given $600 million this year for missile defense. The agreement's at $500. You're right, the President of the United States has a lot of leverage. Well, you know what? He's not the only voice in America. She won't be the only voice in America if she wins. This is about the way the system works. And to my friends in Israel, you asked for 45, you got 38. The Ayatollah is going to get 150 billion. I think a 1.5 billion would be a good signal to send to the Iranians, and I know you could use the money given the threats you face. David Sling needs to get as operationally capable as possible because the Iron Dome is becoming obsolete, and we know where they're headed, Ted. That's why we need the Arrow up and running. They're headed to a ballistic missile going to jump over Iron Dome. The last thing in the world I want to do as a member of Congress is sit on the sidelines and be dealt out of helping an ally at a crucial time in their history. And also the last thing I want to have happen is for the Ayatollah to believe that Congress has been neutered. We have not, and we will not. Thank you all.